We are on, I can't do the Zoom on this one. If anyone wants to do the Zoom, maybe we could just prop it up over here. Yeah? Yes, you want to bring it here and we'll just prop it up? Okay, we're on the top of 3, we're on Gimel Amud Bet. If you're following the art scroll, we're on 3B3. The Gemara continues. Now, if you remember, the last thing that we discussed was Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, where Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi talks about a city that has had a wall around it, but the wall surrounded the city after the homes were built. And in such a case, the question is that considered a walled city or not? Now, there's a machloket in the poskim, as we mentioned. If that was, Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi was just tangentially connected because it was also from the same rabbi, Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, or if this was actually referring back to the case of the Gemara, where a city that had been built before, but then had a wall put on after, would that also be considered a walled city with regards to the Mikra Megillah? And he proves from the pasuk, it says, Ki imkor bet moshav ir choma. It's a bet moshav, a residential home, in a city that's already walled. Now, it's interesting enough, we have one of the people in the shiur is an architect. And we were talking yesterday about this idea. And one of the things that we discussed, just so interesting, is that when a person builds a house in a city that already has a wall in it, the way you build the house is different than a city that builds a house and then afterwards decides to build a wall. Just imagine for 1 second. Imagine you lived in a gated community. In a gated community, you probably would build different front doors to your house because you know you have the added security of being in a walled city. You might build your gardens in a different way, accessible to the street, because everyone that you know is handpicked. It's from your own team. So there's so many differences that you might find in a bet moshav ir choma versus a bet moshav that later on has a choma built in it. So again, we are left with the machloket, the results of the machloket. One last thing I wanted to point out, but we didn't have time because it was the last thing that we did together, is that I wanted everyone to also understand that this is the halachic process. And I felt that this was a beautiful opportunity to learn this lesson. Let me explain what I mean. How many times have you asked a rabbi a halachic question, and the rabbi answers what rabbis almost always answer? It's a machloket. Right? How many times have you heard that? Right? If you had a dollar for every time you heard a machloket, forget about it. Awesome, right? However, and this is where it gets interesting, most often as a congregant or as a person maybe who's not learning the Gemara yourself, you don't know what the rabbi means when he says machloket. One rabbi, oh yeah, you do it before alenu, you do it after alenu. What do you do on Shabbat? You do it with the left elbow. You do it with the right elbow. What do you do with which fish do you prepare for the seudah for Shabbat? Left shark, right? This is how it works. Everyone always has another idea that they're coming up with, but you don't realize what the machloket process looks like. Here's a perfect example. You live in a city that that got a wall that was put up after the time of Yoshua. Do we say that this Gemara is telling you that if the wall was put up, after the houses were built, do we learn from this Gemara that you read on the 15th or on the 14th? So this is what the rabbi means. What is what the Shulchan Aruch means when he says, Yesh Omrim? Some people say, they didn't wake up on one side of the bed and decide to say something. They learned the Gemara and they understood that Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi was talking about the Sugya of Megillah. Or they understood the Gemara and they saw that the Sugya was talking about something else, in which case, so long as it had a wall before the time of Yoshua, I don't care when the houses were built. Okay? Let's continue. So I had one other question that somebody asked me after the shiur I wanted to address. Someone said to me, Rabbi, built before, built after, doesn't make any sense to me. It sounds like a Rei Shira question, but it wasn't a Rei Shira question, right? The question was, it's a good question. We have a Mishnah. The Mishnah tells us that the halacha is that a city that's walled from the time of Yoshua, right? You have different Rishonim. Time of Yoshua, time of Shushan, time of this. They all set the time at different. Not one of them said that the city has to be a walled city with houses built in it after you put up the wall. Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, big Talmid Chacham, but he's after the Tanaim. How does he come in and completely change the halakha and tell you that it depends if the wall came before the house came before the wall? How did he do that? Where did he make that up from? I want to see if anyone can figure this out. We have no opinion that says, that differentiates if you built the wall before the house before the wall. Only in when the wall was up. So if you have a city that's up from the time of Shushan, according to one opinion, from the time of Purim, or from the time of Yoshua ben Nun, according to the other opinion, What's my problem? Why don't I assume it's a walled city? This is super interesting, yeah? Sorry? What do you mean chashivut?
What was the point of the wall? What was the point of the place? Was the place something that was important for a particular reason?
So that's a good explanation, but how did Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi know, assuming that he's saying this about Megillah? Where did he get it from? This is super interesting. You know what the answer is?
You wouldn't have a name if it weren't already a city.
You wouldn't have a name what?
The city wouldn't have a name if there weren't a city. It would just be a wall.
You mean it wouldn't be named a city?
Right.
Exactly. So what Nathan is saying is correct. The way he's understanding this is that what you had when you built a wall around an empty area, right, that had houses in it already, that's not a walled city. That's a wall around the city. But the houses that come afterwards are built in a walled city. So the residences, the people that live in this city are people who live in are residences of a walled city. So he understood that as being part of what the Gemara means when it says a city that has a wall from the time of Yehoshua. He doesn't see it in the wall. He sees it in the word city. Is that clear to everybody? Okay, let's carry on. The Gemara continues, another teaching. Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi. This is a very important halakha. Nidon kikfar. Any city that does not have asara batlanim, 10 people that are batel, that they don't do anything. What does it mean they don't do anything? It means that they're sitting and learning Torah. They're batel from any sort of melacha. They're being paid by the city, scholars, to sit and learn in kolel. So people said this kolel is a new thing. I always like to point them, new thing. What masechet in? Masechet Megillah. It's in Masechet Megillah. The Gemara says over here that if a city does not have a kolel of 10 people who do not work, they sit and spend all day toiling in Torah. That city is called a village. Ya'eni. Okay? Nidon kikfar. You could have 50 million people living in it. It's considered a village. And it would have the halachot of a village. Now, it's interesting to see here. Sorry? Krach is a village. Now, so this Gemara, we're actually talking about the laws of reading the Megillah. So it would change the nature of the way we read the Megillah if there's 10 people sitting and learning. Now, there is the Gemara. My Kamash Malan, what is this coming to tell you? Tanina, we already have this in a Braita. I love this point because the guy's like, okay, Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi, fine. But he made it up. Says the Gemara, what do you mean? That's not even a chidush, Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi. We know that from before. Tanina, the Braitas, the Mishnah says, Ezu ir gedola, what is a large town? Koshesh ba'asara batanin. Pachot mikan, hareze kfar. Less than that is a village. If you don't have the most basic element of being an established city, and what's the most basic element of being an established city? That they have a minyan of people sitting and studying Torah. Answers the Gemara. So what did Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi answer if we were already told, that, what's it called? That a large town is considered a village. Gemara says, we need to tell you this, even though people come from outside and they sit and they're not doing much. They might even be sitting and studying, okay? They're not considered part of the Asara Batlanim. You know why? Because they happen to be. Let me explain what that means. Let's say every day in Manhattan, you have a minyan of people studying Torah. You know why? Because every day, with the zillion people that come from Israel to collect the yeshivas, okay? You have every rabbi sitting around and he's learning while he's collecting for tzedakah. So we for sure have 10 people studying all day, every day in Manhattan. You know how you know? Because you see them here in the morning. I'm judging them favorably. They're probably learning Torah. So does Manhattan have Asara Batlanim then? No. Why? That's the Chidush Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi. They're not people from here. They happen to be here. Now, we're not describing the concept of live here versus not live here. What we mean is that they're not set. Let's say you had 10 people in the city. You have a big city, every day happens to be, I'll give you an example. Let's say you have a bunch of people studying Torah in a city full of working people, okay? They're studying Torah, but there's not 10 people that sit and learn, but every day there happens to be 10 people sitting and learning. What would the halakha be? Would it then be called a town? The answer is no. Why? because it happens to be. It's not set. What establishes it as a town is that the town puts into place. It's like saying a town has policemen. If you have a random guy decides to walk the streets and he's looking around because he's a citizen's patrol, that's not a policeman. You're a town when you hired people that their job all day long is to sit and do this. And what made me realize the job of a kollel people say kollel people don't work. I say absolutely they work. This is just what they work at. They sit and they study Torah. Now, in every city, and this is the funny thing, people are like, should we really support this? I don't know if you know this. You're already supporting 10 people sitting here studying ancient whatever language. We pay in our taxes for people to sit in universities studying languages that don't exist anymore. You know that. We pay, our taxes pay for the city to have people and the universities of the city to have people who study every form of art. There's more than 10 art professors in New York City. By the way, and forms of art that no one cares about. There's so many people doing all of this. We're paying for that. But all of a sudden, when it comes to Torah, something that we say, Ki hem chayenu v'orech chaimenu, now we have a problem. So I was thinking to myself the other day, in Manhattan, there is a kollel. There is a kollel in Manhattan. On the Upper West Side, there's a kollel, right? Now, I think that the people made up of the kollel, I have to find out, are made up from the people that live here. But I was wondering, in this city, do you judge the areas, because of the density of population, do you judge the areas as krachim, as individual? At the Lower East Side, I'm not sure anymore. It used to have. MTJ used to have. Rabbi Friedman can probably tell us if they have, okay?
There's one on East Broadway.
There's one on East Broadway, every day. Okay, perfect. So at least there's one. So if you're judging Manhattan like one city, so at least you've got 10. But think about what a bizayon that is. In a city, 8 million people, the most perhaps successful Jewish city in the world, and what we barely have, we should have, it brings protection. Okay, let's continue. The Gemara says as follows. Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi is on a roll. Yesterday I saw a video of a guy, his name is Korver, excellent three-point shooter. Anybody know Korver? From the Cavs? So yeah, the guy hit 4 threes in a row without a foul, without a break, just went up and down the court. Boom, 3, back, 3, back, 3, back, 3. I feel like the Korver energy, Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, smashing him. V'amar Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi. They try to play defense. No one can take him. V'amar Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi. Oh, Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi says, what if you have a city that was destroyed and then was resettled again afterwards? The Gemara says, Nidon kekrach. It's still considered to be a krach, a city. What does that mean, destroyed? Maybe it means that the wall was destroyed. If the wall was destroyed, the Gemara says, Yashav in, right? If it was settled afterwards, right, again afterwards, yes, the halakha, yes. In. Lo yashav, lo, if it was not settled, lo. We don't get the halakha of a krach. V'atanya, the Gemara says, what do you mean? We have a braita. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yossi Omer, Yossi says, asher lo choma, right? We find the pasuk. Take a look in the inside column. You'll see the words, asher lo choma. Can everyone see it? It's pasuk number Dalet in the inner column where we bring the full pasuk. If he does not redeem the land of a house in a city with a wall around it, he has that year. And the city, the house that's in this walled city goes up to be redeemed. If the guy doesn't buy it during the buyback period of 1 year, then in the walled city, then the halakha is that it goes to him forever. So you see over here it says asher lo choma, that it has a wall. Af al pi she'en lo achshav, right? Even though it doesn't have one now, okay? V'haya lo kodem lachen, and it had one before. Now this is a very interesting Gemara, and I want to point this out to you, okay? The language of the pasuk. Look at the word asher lo choma. How does it spell the word asher lo choma? Can you take a look? Lamed Vav Aleph. I don't know. If there's anything that you could do to confuse somebody more, I don't know what you would do. Lo with an Aleph means that does not have a wall. Lo with a vav means that it does have a wall, that it has a wall. So what did the Torah do? It's like lamed vav aleph. You figure it out. Boom, right? It's a funny thing. So you gave us all the options, right? Take a look for 1 second. So we have over here a kri ketiv. What does kri ketiv mean? We have this in a few different places, right? Where else do we have a law and a law? It's written one way and it's pronounced the other way. Shmuel will know this. Where else do we have law and law? Lamed Vav, Lamed Aleph, the Katuv, which way, one way, and we read. No, in the Tefillah. Yeah. No, that's Shrab Kachalo. Yeah. Okay, we'll come back to you. We'll come back to you. So there's a Lamed Vav and a Lamed Aleph, and we read it one way. It's written one way, we read it the other way. So here the pasuk gave you both options. Why did it give you both options? Because you're supposed to read it both ways, okay? So the Gemara says, what do we learn from here? Are we talking about a house that is in a walled city or is not in a walled city? And the Gemara answers, what it's talking about, Ashelo Choma, we learn from here, even though it doesn't have one now, but it had one before, that would still be the case. And therefore, so a city that had a wall, that the wall was destroyed, you see from this pasuk that it was considering it as part of the walled city game, and that's why it gave you a yes and a no, because we're in a city that is a yes and a no. It is a city with a wall, but the wall was destroyed. So, would we say that case? Ela, Rabbi Shua ben Levi explains, Ma charav. What does it mean it was destroyed? Shecharav me'asara batlanim. It means that it used to have a kolel, and now, unfortunately, the kolel shut down. So we just asked the question, is the Lower East Side one still going on? Now, the Lower East Side used to be a very populated area, one of the richest Jewish, biodiverse areas in the country. All the Halabi people, you should know, a lot of the old Halabis speak fluent Yiddish. Yeah, you know why? Not from Halab. Because when they came to the Lower East Side, all of a sudden they were doing business with their Jewish brothers that were also immigrants that came to Ellis Island. They settled in the slums right there next to Ellis Island. So a lot of the Syrians, you should know, watch the videos from the Sephardic Heritage Foundation. Where'd they get their original goods from to sell on the street? Their Ashkenaz brothers gave them the goods. Now, what did you need to do if there's a customer coming around the corner and you want to be able to talk to the guy, right? And you don't want the other guy to understand. So what do you normally do, Jews? We speak in Hebrew. But the Sephardim and the Ashkenazim didn't understand each other in Hebrew. Because one guy is saying, the other guy is like, Vos? The Hebrew is a different pronunciation. So a lot of the Syrians, speak Yiddish from their days in the garment business. Also the ones that sold stones, 47th Street. They wound up doing a lot of business with the Hasidim. They also didn't want to get ripped off while they were talking to one another. So everyone needed to protect everybody. So we all learned the language like Yosef and the Mitargem, okay? So the Gemara says, and Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi is telling you, if it was destroyed but then rebuilt, nidon kekrach, it's considered a krach. So a city that lost its status because it does not have those asara batlanim, the minute those batlanim are reinstated, again, it's considered to be a walled city with regards to reading the Megillah. Just one last point on this. Someone asked me, where did this come from? Who told you that you needed 10 people learning to be considered a walled city, to be considered a city even? Who told you that? And the answer is that there's certain things that did not need to come from the halakha of a walled city. They come from what you said earlier, Avi, right? That part of the reason why a walled city would be reading on a different day was because the chashivut of that city. Remember? We talked about that city is considered to be a chashuv city. It was worth defending. It was worth building a wall around, strategically, geographically. Part of what makes a city chashuv has got to also be the fact that there's people dedicated to sit and learn Torah all day long, to answer the questions of the people, to study with the people, etc., etc. Now, it's true that there are some kollels that sit and learn with the people every day, and they wind up generating a lot of Torah by learning with the community. The idea of a community kollel is unbelievable, Rabotai, because it brings Torah, it generates Torah, it brings Torah to all the homes. But my friends, even if those rabbis, they do not learn with one person, they sit all day in the room, close the doors. It is that Torah's magineh umatzleh. It protects and it shields. The Torah is a tremendous zechut for all of us, even if there's no interaction. So this is a very important thing to have in the city. If anyone would like to find out, we should find out what's going on in the city. We should also contribute a little bit towards making sure that we, as citizens of the city, are doing this. You have to pay for the roads, right? You have to pay for the street lights. You have to pay for the NYPD because they offer us protection once upon a time, right? But this protection we know is definitely still working for us. Okay, let's continue. Gemara says, "Ve'amar Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi." Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi also taught, "Lord ve'ono ve'geach harashim mukafot chomam imot Yoshua ben Nun havu." These three cities, someone asked me when we started learning, I think it was you, Nathan, which cities do we know? Which cities in Jerusalem still had walls from the time of Yoshua ben Nun? Now this is really interesting because if you're Israeli, you'll recognize that these names are cities that you hear every day. Lod, where's Lod? What's in Lod? The airport. So Ben Gurion is in Lod. The Israelis from once upon a time, they still call the airport, they don't call it Ben Gurion. They say, all the young Israelis, they don't call it Lod. But that's the city that used to have a wall from the time of Yoshua. Kiryat Ono. Ono is also a place in Yerushalayim. And it's still existing today. They have a wall all the way back from then. The Gemara says, Vahani Yoshua ben Anau. Did Yoshua build those cities? We don't have recorded that Yoshua took the time to build the original Ben Gurion. Veha Elpaal ben Anahi. Who built those cities? This man whose name was Elpaal. Dichtivu bnei Elpaal, Ever u'Misham v'Shamed. The pasuk tells us about the children of Elpaal. Who bana et Ono ve'et Lod u'benotea. He built Ono and Lod u'benotea. What a strange word. What does the word benotea mean? Daughters. What does it mean? And it's daughters. It's talking about cities. Suburbs, excellent. So when we learned just now, Krach, when Megilla of a walled city is there, and who's included in that? All the cities that you could see from the walled city. Remember? We said that they all read the same time as a walled city. So we said, why should they read with this walled city? They're not walled. Even a city that you could see on the top of a mountain outside of that might be far away. Nir'ah afal pi she'eno samuch. Still it reads at the same time as the walled city. Why would it do that? The answer is because it depends on the walled city. That's its protection. That's where they go during a time of siege. And here you see it grammatically, linguistically, that what are the cities outside those walled cities called? Binoteha. It's daughters. What do you protect if not for a daddy's little girl? You make sure anyone tries to come and marry her, even if he's the best guy in the world, you get your baseball bat ready. Easton. Let's go. Gemara says, how about Tiberia? Sorry?
Yeah, because it's got walls on 3 sides and the water on the 4th.
Excellent question. As far as I know, it's going to be a wall on all sides. It's a wall on all sides. Now, the reason why I would say specifically with Tiberia is because it's not to an ocean. But you have to realize the idea of a walled city was specifically for protection. If you're exposed on the water side, especially in ancient warfare, that's a disaster. Just a small tidbit of Jewish history. My great, however many great-grandfather, and was a man called Chaim Farchi. Chaim Farchi was a brilliant diplomat and strategist who came from Halab and Damascus, okay? The Farhis were a very powerful, very wealthy family. And he moved actually to Akko, to the area of, then it was called Acre, A-C-R-E. At the time there was a sultan there, his name was Abdul Pasha. He became the right-hand man of the sultan, advising him on everything. All of the sultan's advisors were very jealous of this man called Chaim Farchi, okay? And they made all sorts of plots to go against him. They said that he was doing terrible things against the interest of the empire. And the sultan actually put out his eye. So the drawings of Chaim Farchi are him with an eye patch. In that time, he then took him back. And when Napoleon attacked the city of Akko, okay, because it was again a very important port city, he was put in charge of defending the city, and Chaim Farchi repelled the armies of Napoleon. If you go to Akko now, there's a square you could find with the the cannons still there by the wall where they defended the city of Akko at the time of Chaim Farchi. There's a city actually, Kikar Farchi, and there's a city when I rented an apartment to go study in Eretz Israel. I lived on the corner of Rehov David and Rehov Chaim Farchi, and I did not know until I moved in, put my stuff on the bed, opened the window, looked outside, and I was looking at the street sign that I was living on the corner of. It was Chaim Farchi. How's that for a walled city, defending city, mixed together with some Farhi traditions? Okay, let's carry on. The Gemara, I think we'll finish with this last piece of Gemara. The Gemara says, if that's the case, so how could you tell me that Yehoshua ben Nun built those cities? It says El Pa'al Bananai, because he built Ono ve'et Lod u'benotea. Seems Gei Harashim still is in the clear. The Gemara answers, okay, Uletarmech, according to what you're explaining, Asa Bananai, it wasn't El Pa'al that built it either. Asa was the one that built it. Dichtiv, because it also says in the pasuk, Vayiven Asa et Arei Betzurot asher Yehuda. Asa was the one that built the walled cities that are in the portion of Yehuda. So you see clearly that if you think that it was El Pa'al that built it, and I have another pasuk that says that it was Asa that built it, so you can't ask me a question on Yehoshua, because obviously built doesn't mean that he built it from scratch and it didn't exist before he built it. It means rather that he did more to it. Amar Rabbi Elazar, Hani mukafot choma mimot Yehoshua ben Nun. These were walled cities from the time of Yehoshua ben Nun havu. Charub bimei Pilegesh b'Giva. They were destroyed during the story of Pilegesh b'Giva, which we've already encountered. Right? Remember we read the story of Pilegesh b'Giva in Masechet Ta'anit. In Masechet Ta'anit, the Gemara said, Pilegesh b'Giva, right? That story resulted in the Jewish people going to war against themselves, against the tribe of Binyamin. Okay? So there was a massive war, tore apart the whole of Am Yisrael. And one of the reasons why Tu B'Av is such a happy day for the Jewish people is because on that day, they declared the war null and void, and they were able to marry one another. Says the Gemara, so when they went to war against each other, they destroyed those cities. El Pa'al came and rebuilt the city. Hadur in Pul, again the city fell. Ata Asa Shaptzinu. Asa came along and he fixed it up. And once Asa came and fixed it up, the city was then restored. But it was already there from the time of Yehoshua ben Nun. The Gemara says, Dekanami, this is also seemingly clear in the Pasuk, Dichtiv, and he said to Yehuda, let us rebuild these cities. Asa said to the tribe of Yehuda, let's build these cities. If they are cities already, right, what is he talking about? Did he make them in 3D modeling? Did he print them out and say, let's build these cities? If he's saying these cities, what was he pointing at? Cities that already existed. That means we have a proof from here, Shema Mina, that Asa did not build them, he only rebuilt them. And they are actually cities that are there from the time of Yehoshua ben Nun. Hazaku Baruch.